Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Flawed Sister Squad podcast. I hope everybody is doing okay. We are here and we are having a problem streaming on Facebook. There's always something going on. The devil is busy. We're having a problem streaming to Facebook, but we're going to get it together. It's all good. Um, thank the Lord for all of us being here, healthy, happy. I know we have busy schedules and all that good stuff, but we are here. And this is part two of Saved and Dating, Proper Vetting for Marriage. We have our lovely couples. And here's Lorendia. Hold on. We getting it together. And Lorendia. So welcome everybody to the show. So just one by one quickly, even though your names are on the screen, we know we just give a quick little 5-second, hi, I'm in your name. So we're going to start up top.
Hello, hi, I'm Joseph Gray.
Hi, I'm Kayla Gray.
I'm Andrea Nesbitt.
Hi, I'm Lorendia.
Uh-huh.
Hi, I'm Lori Rogers.
And I'm
All
Shane
right.
Rogers.
All right. And I am Tiquana, your host. So we are going to get right into it. I know a lot of people have things to do after this, so we're going to get right into it. So part one, I do hope everyone saw. We had a really good episode, and we just want to continue with some questions that I did not get to and a couple of new ones. So hopefully we can get through everything today. So we have Joseph and Kayla, just as to catch up. They've been married for going on 2 years.
Yeah.
And then we have Shane and Lori that have been married, I remember, 17 years.
Yeah, that's it. This is it.
17 years. All right. And then we have myself, single, Lorendia, single, Andrea.
Single.
Okay. Single and dating or single?
Single unmarried.
Single. Okay.
Okay. And we're off.
Fair enough.
That's how I filed my taxes.
Right. And Lorendia, you're single.
I'm single, unmarried. Blue.
I am single.
Going here.
Single, unmarried, not dating, not courting, nothing. Okay, so the first question, I want to do a distinction here. Clarifying dating versus courting, because I think it's extremely important to differentiate. A lot of people don't like to use the word dating, especially as believers. I believe Joseph had mentioned on the last episode the connotation behind dating. It's kind of frowned upon, and it may be frowned upon in the church as a whole or like as individuals. I don't know if it's a personal preference. I don't know if it's just the regard we have for being believers, but I do think it needs to be clarified. And I want to ask, and you guys saw this question on here. I thought it was a pop-up question, but it's okay. What your distinction is. We're going to limit our answers down to like 1 minute or less, just so everybody can get in and talk and we don't like run over each other. So I'm going to start with the married couples, Shane and Lori. Do you think it's important to have a distinction between dating and courting?
I think it's on me.
Yes is the answer. You want to go ahead?
I don't know. I don't really know that it's any different. I mean, I think it's just, how do you see it?
I'll say the reason I say yes is because I think in terms of how secular defines it, yes, it's important. I think in terms of how believers, they're probably interchangeably using one and the same because it's about what the intentionality is behind the activity. You're doing so with the purpose of identifying the person to marry, and that's different than just trying to check the flavor of the month.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that. That's the only reason I would say that they're kind of the same, but not because courting is more old school, and I think more of like, oh, we're courting, and you're right, dating can have a funny kind of connotation to it sometimes, but I mean, I kind of think it's the same thing. It's just
Context.
Is it semantics?
I think it's context. I think it's context because if your spiritual belief system that's based on biblical efforts if that's the center of it, then usually if you say dating or courting, to me, it should be with the intentionality of trying to identify, is this a fit? Is this person a fit? Do they believe God? Do we share the same core belief system? Is this a fit? It's a part of vetting, as I think you mentioned in the last question. So you're looking at those criteria with that in mind. I just think dating, the only difference is courting, you have already gathered some information from dating that make you want to make the decision to court. So that's the only way that's the way I see it.
Okay.
But that's just me.
I agree.
All right. Joe and Kayla, either one of you can go first.
Yeah, I think Mr. Rogers said it. The word I want to highlight there, the operative word is intent. So if you look up both of the words, which I've done research and stuff, I've had relationships, dating, the intent, if you look at the literal definition, it talks about being involved romantically with someone else. There's not intent of marriage within the literal definition of dating. Now, courting, there is the intent of marriage within that relational dynamic. So I think the thing that defines both of them is the intent people have going into dating versus the intent people have into courting is what I would say makes the difference.
I didn't know that.
Kayla?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I always think about in dating terms that people will say they're dating and they could be dating for like 5 years. And so again, it's the intent is like kind of the terminology is like, hey, if we click, we click. And that's kind of the extent of where it goes. But when I hear the word courting, people, how that is used, again, the operative word, like my husband pointed out, is, and Mr. Rogers has said, it's just the intent. Where's the intent? The intent is there's this process and this order that we're following to get to the point of being married. So.
And also, before I go to Andrea and Lorendia, I think when you use the word dating, that can include multiple people as well. So when you say that you're dating, that means that, and it not always, I'm not saying that that's what people are doing when they're dating. I'm saying that when you think of it in hindsight and in the secular world, I know when I was dating prior to being saved, I was dating a couple of people. I wasn't committed to anybody. The intent at the time wasn't to go any further with anybody. I was just having fun dating, being free, doing what you're doing. It did not necessarily come along with intimacy. So let's be clear, but it could include with some people, depending on how they define it. So I think it's very important for there to be a distinction, whether you're a believer or not, because behind every relation at the age I'm at now, I don't know about when you get older, you start wanting the people to, be a little wiser, do better than you did. So I think anything you do, there should be an intent. And if your intent is to just be out there wilding out, then that's your intent. Just be safe, I hope. But yeah, that's my take on it. Lorendia, do you think there's an importance to for there to be a distinction between the two?
Should there be a distinction? Yes. It's like every word in the dictionary. You should know the definition. You should know what it means. I think dating and courting is like Lori was hinting on it. It's like there, and there. People don't use it in the right context. They don't, you know what I mean? So you may say, oh, I'm dating him, but really y'all actually could be courting, but you didn't say that, because you're using it in the wrong context. You're using it in the wrong sense. So I feel like that's one of those two words people can use in the wrong way. So whether we know it or not, the issue is people have used it in the wrong way. But personally, I see dating as more open. Like to you, it's like what you just said, T. It's more people. Usually you're not yet narrowed down. Courting is when you've already been like, it's me and you, we locked in. This is before we jump in the broom. But dating is like, I haven't had the revelation. So it could be John, it could be Mike, you're not sure.
Right. which isn't fair to either, because I mean, depending on what your intent is. Andrea.
So I'd have to piggyback on what everybody's just saying. So yeah, definitely a distinction between the two, and I think the people that are in those I don't want to say situationships, but in those and the people that are involved, I think they are the two that have to be very clear on what they're doing.
Yes.
Because there's always this, these assumptions, you may be dating him or courting him, but he may be dating, multiple people, so we have to be clear on that. And so I do think there should be a distinction. And I do agree that dating, in my opinion, is like, we're dating multiple people until we decide to be exclusive. Now we're courting, and we're courting for marriage, and we're not courting for 10 years. Just be clear. Whoever may be watching, I'm just kidding.
But listen, when you start saying stuff like "just to be clear,"
that's no such thing. There's no such thing as courting for 10 years.
Yeah.
No.
And I think we kind of answered the next one, kind of, sort of. How important is it to vet or be intentional in relation to seeking a mate? And I think I kind of touched on it when I gave my answer, and I think pretty much you guys have too. Because I don't think a lot of people do, and I think we touched on this the last episode. I don't think there is intent out there. Everybody's just doing what everybody wants to do, and I think that can be a very dangerous game. Even when you do vet, are you doing it properly? Like, what things are you looking for when you're vetting? Like, what are your standards? What are your intentions? What do you want from that person? So for the people that don't really care, what would you say? Why would you say it's important to have that characteristic of vetting and looking for certain things in relationships? Anybody could answer that one.
I think if someone doesn't care, they're probably not looking for commitment. Because if you're looking to make a commitment with someone and you're looking for marriage outright, you're going to care. If you know what it means and what it truly involves. If you say, I don't care, whoever come along, whatever, you probably don't want to get married, or you honestly don't know what marriage means. And you wouldn't be interested in vetting because it wouldn't matter to you.
Okay.
I don't think that's the right way to look at it, but I'm just saying I think that would be.
No, that's the truth. Yeah, I agree with that. Joe and Kay?
Yeah, just to add what Sister Lori was saying, I just think of the scripture. It says, how can two walk together unless they agree? And so in seeking a mate, you have to, that's the foundation of moving into already that marriage, is you have to agree that there is this process that we're going to move through, and that there are these questions that we have to agree on, or agree in understanding each other's perspective. So that vetting process is important in order to understand where's the agreement. And then also too, if you're doing it the biblical way, God is not the author of confusion. He's a God of order. And so that process, that initial process, it does set the tone of, hey, this is the order of God, the kingdom of God that we are moving through. So that vetting process, it is important. And again, it sets the tone of establishing those fundamental things, communication, those fundamental things of understanding. And so I would say that vetting process is very key. And again, it's how can you walk together unless you agree? And then that's the point of which you also kind of come to that place of understanding if you're equally yoked as a part of the vetting process. And that is the vetting process.
Yeah. And real beautiful stuff today.
Yeah, that was nice. That was nice.
Where you start that vetting process and which zone is important as well too. I'll talk about the discovery zone, the friend zone, and intentional zone. You shouldn't be vetting someone to be in the intentional zone when you're discovering who they are. I vetted Kayla once we were friends because we already had a foundation of respect, loyalty, and now I'm seeing, okay, as a friend, we're talking about, okay, what an intentional zone would look like with a courtship. I shouldn't be going into, I just met this girl in the discovery zone. I don't even know who she is, but seeing if she can be my wife. Like, I should be figuring out who she is to see if she can even be a friend to me first, because we all want to marry our friend, right? That's what we say. So I think where you're starting your vetting too is important, because that's where you're lining expectations up. I remember going on countless outings with young ladies, and they're thinking like we're about to get married. I'm like no, I don't
Look
even
at
know.
Kayla. No, you're not.
I'm not betting you to get married. I'm betting you to see if we can even get to the friend zone. Like I can't even determine if you're someone I even want to be in constant association with. So I think where you even start that vetting process is very critical on establishing that relational dynamic with that individual as well. So.
See, Joe, they were trying to get you to the end zone.
Yeah, they were like, "What's your intentions?" I'm like, "I don't know you. I can't even ask you.
To get something to eat.
Yeah, like my intentions is who are you? To get to know who you are. That's all, And then again, like we have to establish something. So yeah, it's a lot to add to that later, but it's yeah.
Right. And then along those lines too, I think it depends on what season of your life you're into. And then outside of that, I think that the urgency of some people, they do want to ask those questions. They do want to ask those questions up front because it's like, okay, so we met. All right, cool. There was obviously an attraction there. We exchanged numbers. I don't even know if that first conversation, you start introducing like what your expectations are to even see if you're going to go on that date or have that friend go out for coffee. You have to have a conversation. This isn't on here, but at what point do you tell people, look, okay, so we got the exchange telephone numbers, the first phone call. Hey, how are you? What are you guys talking about on that? Hey, how are you? Before you even meet up to go for coffee. And then I'll tell you what my conversation is going to look like on that first conversation. Because you have to understand, we got to know what's up. So that first conversation, what's going on in that first conversation before you even meet up for coffee?
I like to keep it general and like to see, I'm gonna be honest, I'm someone who likes to, because I know how to have conversation and when it's flowing, I like to honestly see if the man brings up God himself, because I am. But for me, if we within that first conversation, if God don't come up, it's not for me. It's already not for me. That's how it goes for me. Like if we don't somehow get to where we talk about how we got saved, talk about a testimony, if there isn't some kind of like revelation, there isn't something there that gives us a spiritual connection, that for me is where it ends. So that to me is the first conversation, is really figuring out somebody's spirituality. There's not much. I don't care about your favorite color. I don't care about where you like to eat. Because if you die, what does all that matter to me? Yeah. Because like you said, two cannot walk together except they agree. So if we haven't agreed that Jesus is Lord, then this conversation is not going past here.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Okay.
Drea, what does that first conversation look like?
I'd have to say the same thing. I have to see, like, what is your background? What is your foundation? You don't got to be Kojic. You ain't got to be Baptist. Just, do you have a personal relationship with God? Let's see what that's like. And it's so funny because, and this is kind of off, but on the same, in the same arena, when I would make that step to go out, to have dinner or lunch with someone. And I remember testing the waters, when the food would come, they're like, okay, go ahead and say grace. And I'm like, okay, let's see, and one guy was just like, oh no, you say it, you probably closer to God than I am. I'm like, no, you're the man at this table, you say grace, and let me see how you say it. I'm just kidding. But yeah. So yeah, that foundation is a must.
And I think it also depends too on where you meet that person. See, so you can so if you meet someone at church, you're kind of apt to believe that they're probably there, or at least obviously interested in the church, because if you meet them there, then you got a little bit of safety. Not saying everybody go to church.
Perhaps.
Right. I'm not.
Okay. Listen, the Robbins know something. Perhaps, maybe.
Right. But I'd feel a little bit of comfort for me personally in knowing that I met him at church, versus if you're going to a restaurant, or and like I said at one of our other podcasts, that the restaurants out here are a little different, because they're like kind of lounge, like you go in and you get your food and you're like not in like a regular, it's not like a Papados restaurant. The food that I like, or where you go for some good soul food, is like lounge based, and you go in there and grab it and then going on out. So if I'm meeting somebody, when I went to this particular place, to get some wings, and you're just not in there getting some wings, then I'm probably not gonna. We're not gonna exchange numbers. I don't know. I probably missed my husband a couple of times. Who knows? But it also depends on where you are when you meet certain people.
I think it's also where you are physically, like you're saying, but I also think it's where you are in life. When you're in your 20s, honestly, you have a little bit more time. So you might be more apt to have a conversation and find out something, and talk more maybe before as just as friends, as getting to know each other in the discovery zone. You might be willing to spend more time there. When you start getting in your late 30s, 40s, you can start to tell kind of pretty quick, like, you know what, I'm just looking at the way you walking and this ain't gonna work. And you know what, God bless you, Godspeed, but we're not for each other. I'm just saying that older you get, the more you know yourself. There are some guys, Tijuana, that that you're like, I don't care what he say. I'm glad if he loved. I hope he does love Jesus, but he could be Jesus' best friend. I ain't going out with him. And that's just kind of also where you are, I think, in life. I used to always before, and I haven't been single in a long time, but I used to always similarly. And we met in church, and we knew each other. We were friends first, so we were in that friend zone, like Joseph talked about. So we kind of knew a lot about each other. I knew he was saved for real and stuff. But anyway, before when I would meet someone or something, I would find that just when in talking to them, just in just in that discovery zone, similar to what Lorindia was saying, I'm going to talk about the fact that God is a part of my life. That's just so much a part of me until if you have a conversation with me and you don't know me or the first time you're meeting me and God doesn't come up at all, it's just a no-go from there, because that's so much about who I am, what I believe, what guides my life, what guides my decisions, that I'm gonna, if nothing else, I'm gonna say I went to church yesterday. I mean, if nothing, there's something about it is going to come up. And if you say, "Oh, I was just hanging out," and you never, well then, okay, so now I understand. We're probably on a different page,
Right.
And that's how you got me.
Go ahead, Kayla.
And to add to like what everyone is saying, just in terms of, how can I say this? Seeing that initial conversation as if you were meeting like a friend of like another sister in the Lord, right? I think because as the opposite sex, we can put a lot of stress and tension on that first conversation. And I think that can set us as women, our emotions and our feelings in a different direction. And then that could start kind of preparing us to move quicker in this, the different zones than what's necessary. And especially when the man is the one that's leading those zones forward. So I think it's, especially for us as women, to really grab a hold of our feelings and our emotions and just see that initial conversation, yes, as this is just a brother in the Lord who's a friend, just like it would be in me initially meeting a sister in the Lord. And then if things progress in that direction, then I can follow his leading. But at the start of it, where I guess again, as supporting the women, to just really just keep it at that level of like, hey, this is just a friend. So whatever I would talk with a sister in the Lord upon firstly meeting her, that's the way I can conduct this first time in meeting this brother in the Lord.
Now, girl, don't tell them everything you would tell your sisters in the Lord, because I know me and Taquana done had some conversations. I wouldn't advise you share with them. No.
Don't be saying that. You're going to have people.
I'm kidding.
Joke. Everybody.
Joke.
Speaking of order, because Kayla did mention order, and then Joseph piggybacked and mentioned order. I was not going to show this until we got to our submission episode for the ladies.
Yeah.
However, I am going to show this, and you tell me if you agree. I have two things I want to share, actually. Let me see if I'm doing this right. Hold on. Did I do this right? Give me a second. I always have an issue when I try to share my screen. Let me see. Oh, is it a video file? 1 second, y'all. I'm sorry.
While she's doing that, Kayla, you have a good point. Sometimes we get, as women, we just think about, oh, he's cute. That could be my husband. It's like,
Lori is romanticizing, doing too.
Yeah, you just met
You're
him and you
overworking the
signed
moment.
My last name already. That's how it goes.
Hey, you're like, what's your last name? Bronson. You're like, wait, whoa. We don't even know what we want to have for lunch. Just calm down.
I could not get it.
And it's interesting when you meet that there are sometimes, it's rare, men who are trying to marry every woman they meet. And you're like, I don't, and it's so funny because then we feel like they typically.
Lori, you're onto something. That's something. Because I've met those that are like, oh my God, you're my, whoa, hold on. Are you ready? Would you move in with me? This is our first date.
Right.
Like, wow, this is it.
And I can't find it. It's not coming up. I hate that. I hate that did that.
You don't want to summarize it for us?
Well, it's the picture of the order. So Christ, husband,
yes,
wife,
yes,
children.
yes.
When we're talking about order, and then I was gonna present. Maybe that's why it's not coming up, because I was gonna present it on the submission episode, because we know some of our sisters in Christ and just women in general they're kind of scared of that word. But does everybody believe in that order? Christ, husband, wife, children.
Absolutely.
Without
it, I can tell you, it will not work.
I mean, that's the word of God. You know, the Christ is
head
of the church, as the head. The man is the head of the wife. Like Christ gave his life for the church, just like the husband should give his life for the wife. I mean, that's the order of God. I mean, it's not even something you could contend with. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page with that. Although things are, biblical and, God has his standard and requirement, you do have some believers that have issue with certain things. I've actually heard people.
I think people struggle a lot with that because we mentioned it a little bit in the last one, because they don't understand it. It's right. When you don't understand something, fear creeps in and you worry about, what does that mean for me? And all of a sudden that changes the whole dynamic from, if anything that turns into what about me, and it takes it off of what about our relationship together under God and what he requires. If you starts coming to me, that means fear is in there and there's a lack of understanding. So I think that it's important, because that word doesn't mean subservient. It doesn't mean she has nothing to bring to the table. It doesn't mean, so people fear sometimes what they don't understand, or how it's been abused or usurped by members of authority that they've seen take that, drag it, and use it in an inappropriate way to treat somebody however they want and say it's ordained and blessed by God. So I understand why people get scared. So I think it's important not to judge them because of their fear, but help them understand what that means.
And I think also, to piggyback on that, when you said fear, what jumped in my mind also, my heart was, the scripture tells us that perfect love casts out fear. And I think that a lot of times the issue is because we live in a fallen world, we have not experienced perfect love. And we don't understand perfect love. We have a hard time accepting the perfect love of the Father. And if we have a hard time truly accepting how much he loves us perfectly, it's going to be very hard then for us to accept perfect love from another person or your spouse. And and I noticed that, I can speak from experience, because I would have lots of fears. After 17 years, there's things I'll be like, oh, I don't know if I should, I wonder what he's going to say. And then I realized, like, well, that's you talking. Think about love, perfect love. And then I can that allows you to be more open. And it's not that it's vulnerable. Yes, it is. And it's scary, but that is perfect love, casting out that fear. And if that's how you also know, if you know you can't trust him, that might tell you something else.
It's another issue.
That's a different issue. But if you're with who God has for you, remember that.
So what's the So just so everyone's clear, I always like to get clarity, and I don't want people to. I just like to get clarity. What's your definition of perfect love? That word perfect, because some people tend to think, because there's different definitions for perfect. So some people think perfect is flawless, or biblically, perfect means maturity. Correct me if I'm wrong. So how do you put those together when you say perfect love? What's the definition of that? Because we know nothing except the love of God. That is perfection from him. However, how do you translate that into a relationship, into a marriage, into a courtship?
I translate it as mature love. Mature love meaning um, not the love that expects your heart to jump and to skip a beat and your stomach to turn every time you see each other. Not the kind of love that doesn't accept that when you wake up, your breath stinks. Not the kind of love that doesn't understand that, you know what, I may look great now, but I don't feel good all the time and I don't always look like this. But the mature love sees you, not those things, and understands you, sees you. He sees me. He sees me more than I can see myself sometimes because his love is mature. But I think it's tied to your relationship with God. I think you have to have a mature love with God. Like I said this before, I want him to love God more than me. I think he needs to have, you each need to have a mature love with God to understand that God also knows your breath stinks when you wake up. And he knows all of your stuff. You don't know everything in your own heart, but he does, and he still loves you.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
the maturity is that if I understand that that's how God loves me, and then I know that he also has a relationship with God, that mature love says, this is maybe an ugly part of me that I don't like and I need to deal with, but I trust that you love me and you know me because your love for him is mature and your love for me is mature.
Perfect
Joe and
love is his love. It's agape
Yeah.
love. It's unconditional. It's
Okay.
not something that you're trying to work up or do, right? We can't make ourselves holy. It doesn't matter what we can do. We can't. We are holy because of what he did, and we receive that. His love is the same, but we then work out our own soul salvation to understand, how do I put into use the love that it says the Holy Spirit is shed abroad in my heart? How do I learn how to apply that against my fears, my past experiences, my hurts, my traumas, everything else? So it's not that you have perfected love, you have his perfect love, and you let that flow through.
Preach, sir. Joe and Kayla, you agree or no?
Yeah, I like when you said the unconditional love, that part kind of illuminated to me, because if we love Christ, like I'm gonna be a leader in our relationship and love her regardless of what she does, because I'm gonna have to give an account on how I treated my wife, right? Like even if she's disrespecting me, if she's doing things that I still, out of my dedication to Christ being the foundation of my relationship, needs to exhibit and exemplify what a leader is, what a husband is, giving his life for his. Like I still have to do that unconditionally because Christ is
Unconditionally.
telling me that I need to do it. It's not contingent on whether she's following me or not. I
You
don't get
gotta
to stop
preach.
being a leader. I don't get to start disrespecting her because I don't feel
That's
like
right.
she's getting to me the way I need her. My leadership and my role in a marriage is not conditioned on what she does, but it's unconditional because the word of God tells me what I need to do, and it goes vice versa. It doesn't matter how bad I lead. As long as I'm not leading her into sin, she has to submit to me.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think, go ahead, Kayla. Go ahead.
He wrapped it up. I have nothing else. I agree. Like that was spot on. Yeah.
Okay, Andrea and Lorendi, I'm going to get your thoughts on what both of what they said before I go into this that I know is going to play. So, Andrea, do you agree with what both couples said?
I agree with both said. I have nothing to add to or take away. Perfectly said. I'm learning over here. That was
right.
good.
And excuse me for, I don't want the singles to feel like you're being left out. I really.
Oh, no. This is good.
I really want.
No, this is good.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
It's where everyone has agreed that we're trying to get to where these couples are. We have an extensive separation of time with Joseph and Kayla being newlyweds, and then we have seasoned couple here, and it starts from somewhere, and it just worked out perfect because both sides are important. Although they've only been married for almost 2 years, it doesn't discredit anything.
Right.
We have a very mature couple here with Joseph and Kayla, and the order in which they got together. A lot of seasoned people weren't even thinking about the stuff that Joseph and Kayla were thinking about when they were in their vetting process. So I don't want, and I'm saying that because I'm just going to say it. So, whoever's watching, because there were comments, and you get this isn't for everyone. Everybody's platform isn't for everyone. It's only to those who are receptive of it. And then you do have some people that's like, what can somebody that's been married for 2 years, they ain't been through nothing. They can't, you can always pull from anybody. You know what I mean? Especially if it was God ordained. It's not like it's a secular couple. And you know what I mean? You should pull wherever you can get some positivity and look, fact is fact, whether it came from a 12-year-old or whether it came from a 50-year-old.
Yeah.
So I just want to set that record straight. We're not going to have people just on here just talking and not, being able to contribute some good advice and some good perspective. So I wanted to put that out there. So, just to clear up those comments. No. So, Lorindia, do you agree with, if you remember what they said? I'm sorry, I didn't plan on saying
No, I remember exactly. I'm going back to what my sister Lori was saying. Like, you hit the nail on the head about the perfect love. I mean, when you think about when you're actually walking in that maturity and you it brings other things, it brings peace. Like when you truly are able to be mature in love, you have peace in that. There's joy in that. There's so many other things. So yes, it's supposed to drive out that fear because there's so much more that comes with that perfect love, that ability to be like, tell you my day without, like just to be comfortable and knowing like you are here, you accept me. And like, God is showing up in you. I can see that.
Yeah.
I have a verse, but I'll keep it for the next question you have.
Okay. And then before we move on, I wanted to point out something very important that Joseph said. It's important that you do your part. Yes. And I'm paraphrasing, but you do your part regardless.
Right. That's right.
Of what that other person does, because you're only accountable for you. You're not accountable for that other person. So it can't be, I can't wait to this episode. You can't say, I'll be submissive if, like, you know what I mean? And then, of course, but the caveat to that is you have to be submissive to God. So that's another thing with submission. The husband, you have to be submitted to God. Let's just say that neither person was saved when they got married. Because there are situations like that. People become saved once they're in the marriage, Yeah. At that point, what if the female got saved first and the male was not saved?
The Bible says the
husband. Okay, that's submission episode. That's submission episode. Let's not go there.
Okay.
We're not gonna go there. Sorry. Okay,
go
ahead.
The Bible talks about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's thank you for sharing also too earlier about me and Kayla's experience, because actually our ministry is not necessarily about marriage and what it takes. Our parents been married 80 years together combined, but we realize our ministry is getting married in this modern age. Like, what does it take? Because we realize that dating or courting was completely different than when our parents did it, which is why they weren't the ones that were leading us through this process, because they didn't have text messages. Like, it's a completely different landscape. And so like we realize that our ministry is targeting those who are single, who wants, how do I get married in this day and age? What is a respectable, godly manner on how I can get married? So we're not like counseling couples, because we ain't been married that long, right? But we But our ministry is geared towards the singles who want to get married.
Right.
We can say a lot about that process.
Yeah, that's good.
We've
Yeah,
been
and
age and done it. Yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead and finish.
No, we've been in this modern age and we've dated. Like I was single for over a decade, you know, like, and I've dated and I've courted and I've did mistakes and I did good things. And so like, that's where we found our ministry is at in this season is targeting singles who are trying to get married in this day and age, because it's a totally different thing. Like we in our 30s, our parents was teenagers when they got married. They didn't have the internet, you know, it was just a whole different landscape, you know, and so we realized where our strengths is at, you know, on how to get married, and then where our parents having 80 years combined together, where their strengths at on how to keep a marriage. And so that's what we're drawn from. And now Shane and Lori as well, like getting married so much and having that wealth of wisdom and knowledge, it's a ministry that like we seek to get from those other wiser couples that's been in a relationship for a while. So yeah, thanks for.
And that's the dynamic of this podcast as well.
Yeah.
That's why I said we got Shane and Lori who have been married going on for almost 20 years. And then we have you two. It's just funny how the Lord sets stuff up, because I had no idea that I was going to be doing this piece. And then I had no idea either that it was going to become a series, because yes, it's going to become a series. Every month, once a month, we're going to be talking about this because it's needed. And I guarantee you content is never going to run out. We're going to always have something to talk about, because I mean, it is what it is. Okay, so this is going to work this time, guys. I want to play this video. I want to play this video. Okay.
I disagree with this statement. Marriage is simple. It's just choosing the other person every single day.
Every single time. I 100% agree.
When did you get married?
I was 26. This was 2007.
Would you say that you were ready for marriage at the time?
No. Nobody's ever ready.
No one's ever ready.
Nobody's ever ready.
At what point did you understand what your wife's style of communication was, and how hard was it to adapt to that?
If we were married, we've been married 16, I would probably say year 11 or 12 is when I really started to get it.
You bumped heads for 11 years? One of the things that I struggle with is she feels that most of the times when we have disagreements, she has to fight for her perspective to be seen. And I felt so bad when it clicked in my brain. Oh, you do that. You shouldn't do that.
Here's the thing. You're not going to agree all the time. You're not going to be on good terms all the time. But when you're not, you have to understand, like, that's a healthy part of a relationship. That's living with somebody. That's being close. The first 10 or 12 years, I didn't accept when we disagreed. Like, and she didn't accept with me. But what we learned in getting more mature is, I love everything about you eating the stuff that gets on my damn nerves.
Okay. I'm sorry for that last word. But what did you guys think about the video? So I have one particular question on the video. When he said no one's ready for marriage. So that man has been married for 16 years. He said no one is ready for marriage, which I think is what the problem is. That goes into our next question. Do you agree with that statement? Anybody?
I would have to ask what you mean by ready. I would have to ask what you mean by ready.
Yeah, I feel like that's so perspective. Like,
well, I think you can be as ready as you can be to get married at the time.
right.
Meaning you love God, you love each other, you've prayed about it, you know this is who God has for you, and you're willing to make the commitment. I think that's all as ready as you can be. Are you ready for what marriage is and the long haul of marriage?
Right.
I don't know that
Right.
you can be ready
Right.
when you first get married, because things happen, life unfolds unlike you think it will. When you first get married, you think this isn't happening, this is gonna happen. First thing that happened when we got married was my dad died a few months after. And it changed me, because I felt like a part of me was gone. It was very hard. And my parents had been married my whole life. So my mom was all of a sudden a widow. And so it changed the landscape of things. And just as we've gone, then your parents moved to another state. That was different. His grandmother passed. That changed things. life just keeps happening and changing, and you can't be ready for all of those things. Just like even if you were single, you're not ready for everything that's going to happen in your life. Marriage means though that you're going to be in it with somebody else, which is the should be the good part, because you have that person to support you, to be your rock, and some stuff you're going to go through together, that you're going to be each other's rock. But to be ready to get married versus ready for marriage are two different things. You can be ready to get married, but ready for the marriage, that's a lifelong, I think, experience.
So y'all know y'all pulling out the reason why I played that. You guys are pulling out
Yeah.
the exact point I was trying to make. And Joseph, you headed it off with what does ready mean. So y'all, we just on one accord. So
Yeah.
Joe, with that being said, what she just said, what's your response now?
Yeah. So what just came to me, because I talked to so I would say yes, you can be ready to get married. This is why I say this. It's a decision. Just like salvation, you choose to give your life over to God. Right? You make a decision, for God so loved the world. And God always parallels marriage with his love for his children, and us being the bride of Christ, right? So just like you're choosing, you can choose, like, I'm going to decide to love this woman and marry her despite what may come through. So I think, yeah, you could be ready for marriage if you are of the mindset, like we all had to make a decision to accept Christ into our life, and in whatever that meant, we were going to be committed to that. Some of us might have went back for a minute, some of us might not. But the thing is, it's a decision. Just love is a decision you make. And so I think, yeah, you can be ready for marriage. Now, are you going to be the best prepared in a marriage for everything that comes through? I don't know. I don't think you're going to, because you ain't been there, right? So you ain't going to be the best prepared. But as far as your decision to decide to show up and love this person every day, I think that mindset and that dedication, yeah, you can have, and which is what we had. Which is why we wasn't, courting for a long time. It didn't take me long to decide to marry her, because I knew what I was gonna do. Just like I decided to accept Christ in my life, I decided to take her as my wife, because our spirit bear witness to one another, and I knew that with her spirit and the same spirit we have, that we were going to be able to, be on the same page at some point, and God bring us together. So yeah.
Kayla, you want to add or no?
Oh yeah, I definitely would. I would say I agree both with Sister Lori and my husband, just because also too the dynamic of I've heard people say when you're single you don't know the entirety of marriage, like right, like we've extensively been in our single season prior to being married, and so had attended so many seminars about knowing marriage, and just because you know something. I think even Mr. Rogers brought this out, that just because you know something doesn't mean you understand it. So in that, once you're in marriage, you really understand what it looks like because you're in it, right? Like just a basketball team. You have your training day and you have the days prior to the actual game itself. And it's always different when you're in the actual game itself. It's the same thing. When you're in the marriage itself, the way submission looks, the way it looks for your husband, like all these preferences and dynamics and factors that are not contributed to when you have and know the information, it changes in the way it lands when you're in marriage itself. So yes.
And at the end of the day, with anything, life is gonna life. When life start lifing, I don't think a lot of people prepare for life to start lifing. They just do all this preparing, to get married and line all their which is great. Line all your ducks up, right? Say what you want, say what you need, your expectations, put it out there, but know that life is gonna life. Like they always say, it's easy to get married. It's easy to go and, do the whole marriage, because that's for the people. The whole big, dress, wedding, all that is for the people. But then where's, you two are the only ones in the marriage at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember that your faith is still engaged in this process. It's that's why it needs to be present in the vetting process. That's one of the first things you need to see evidence of the person's faith, because listen, you don't know what you don't know, and you haven't faced what you haven't faced. And the truth of the marriage is, faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word. If the word says the man that finds a wife finds a good thing, And it also says behind that, they always leave this out, and obtains his favor, God's favor. So if his favor is with me, my faith is engaged. I've known, I've identified it. He's allowed me to know that I have found who he said, and he speaks to her, right? We're just bringing the word back. If the faith is not part of it, how can you can't know everything? So you've got to be engaged, have your faith engaged. So now I found a good thing. I've obtained his favor. His favor is with me for everything that I'm going to face that I don't know and that I don't know how to handle. And his word is there to equip me. And then the other scripture that people use, they say, well, God has joined together, let no man put asunder. And they talk about that in a sense of, defensive and protective. But listen to what he's saying. What God has joined, not what I decided on my own, not what, right? We're following the pattern of the word from a faith perspective, which is faith helped me find and then gave me favor. That helps me face what I don't know and what I haven't experienced. God joined us together. And then the other scripture where people, they don't necessarily use it in the context of marriage all the time, when they say when 2 or 3 are gathered together, and it says where 2 or 3 of you are gathered together because of me. So the because of me relates back to his favor. I found favor. I found her. Right? You get what I'm saying? You just keep tying together. It's not just me and my decision. It is that I exercise my faith throughout this whole process. That's what's helping me, quote unquote. I'm not ready of my own. I'm ready because he's with me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, Lorindia, you have something to say? No? Andrea?
Just to piggyback on that's good. Ready to marry, but not ready for the marriage, because I think Joseph was saying is like, the marriage part is the unknown, right? You're going into this, you don't, you think it's rainbows and flowers and butterflies and all this, and it's not, the stinky breath, all that stuff, And even if, let's just say you've been married before, this situation is still new. This is a different person. So it's still the unknown, So I'd have to agree. Ready to marry, but not ready for marriage. Yeah.
I've learned that too, because I've learned that too, because I am divorced, and that's something I've talked about, and obviously he knows that, but I'm saying it's something that's not something I'm proud of, but it's part of my story that I share, because I think it's important to know that I did get married before and I wasn't ready for marriage. But that's not the total reason the marriage failed. But when you marry someone who you don't have a core with, who you're not in agreement with, who you're not on the same page with, you can be ready to marry, or just ready to be with someone, or ready to not be alone. But definitely not ready for marriage. I can say, having been before, I wasn't ready to get married, to be married, to be a wife, until we got married. And the one thing I will say is, over time, you each individually change. You individually grow. I turned 50 this year, and I am not the same as I was when I was 30. How old was I? I'm just not the same person. He's not the same person. His core is the same. His character is the same. But we've experienced things together and individually that have changed us. And that's the part about marriage that it's just going to change. It's going to happen. You can't call it.
Right.
You just can't.
And I know Joseph and Kayla, I know you guys have to go. Are you good? Okay. Because we're at the top of the hour, and I knew this probably was gonna run over. But before we go, I want to ask this one question, and I think we kind of already did. But what do you believe is missing from relationships in society and in this era today? For me, that's God. He's not even included in the process, whether you are a believer or not. And like I said, I think this can go universally, whether you're a believer or not. Are practicing salvation. Let me say that. Because there are a lot of people that believe in God, go to church, they just haven't given their life over to him, but they know what they're supposed to do when they're looking for a mate, and they just choose not to include God in that situation because they're not actively saved. They're not actively living for God. So that's my answer. God is missing from any type of vetting process, any type of anything from relationships. I'm going to let Kayla and Joseph go and answer that one, that question first.
Yeah, in that what you're saying, T, is just no, this is for another show. But I have to say it is just the place of women speaking to the women, understanding their role and what relationships look like. And I think again we're up against a very strong agenda of the feminist movement where women think that they are equal to men, and so they're clapping their hands at men and trying to run things, and they're not showing womanly characteristics of being discreet, being gracious, being graceful, respecting the man, even if he isn't saved, but still that order of God is in place. Men are natural leaders innately. Like that God created Adam first. So they are first, they're leaders. So as a woman, having an understanding and knowing, respecting a man, just respecting a man. And so in that place of relationship, I'm not saying that you come to the point of you being a doormat or just, again, giving yourself entirely over. But again, I'm saying having discretion, things that are part of the nature of being a woman, being graceful. I'm not being loud, not trying to cut him off when he's talking, but understanding your place in the role of the relationship era. Again, it's great you have a business. It's great that you can have your education. These things are wonderful, but not to allow them to have pride in your heart to where you say, well, I don't need him, and this is who I am, and accept me as I am. Because we think about that when that was the enemy. The enemy, when he was Lucifer, said, I wanted to be like God. So I think it's important that as women that we kind of come back to a place of being humble, take away the pride. We're not trying to be equal to men, but we're wanting to be women in the relationships. So.
That was good.
That was real good.
I want to echo, I echo what you said, Takana. God, for sure. Everything my beautiful wife just mentioned. And I would say for me, like a modern day roadmap. I remember asking multiple leaders, like simply, how do you get from I don't know her to a ring on it? Like, what's the roadmap? Like, how do I get from like she's a stranger and to like now she man and wife? And so a roadmap that you are able to go through and still honor God through it in your relationship dynamics through each zone. And this is where I came up with all that. It's still exemplifying, representing a godly relationship, and God is still glorified through each stage. So I think a roadmap is the thing that's missing too. Like again, just how do you get from nothing to man and wife?
Just for the sake of becoming man and wife. Like there's no roadmap usually, and it just doesn't exist. And then going back to the whole submission, like the next panel episode next month is outside of this. We can probably roll it over when we meet with the couples again, but the submission episode is specifically for women. It's going to be a panel of women, and we're really going to get into the conversation because Kayla made some great points about these agendas that are being pushed and whole feminist thing, and I am woman, which you are. However, it's using discretion when to use that, because if you feel that way, then maybe you don't need a partner. Just don't, because you can't. You gotta let the relationship be what it's designed to be. And in defense, I know a lot of people feel certain ways because of what they had to be overall for so long, what they had to be in the previous, what they had to be in the now. So to hand over the reins when he finally decides to step up and be what he's supposed to be, it can be a little hard, but we'll save all that for the little submission episode because Joseph pretty much covered that. Regardless of what is going on, you are accountable for how you are supposed to represent yourself. We gotta go, y'all. I really wish we could have did this an hour and a half, but we're gonna go. We'll be back, everyone. And I didn't get to nobody's comments. I'm sorry. I see them. I hear all you guys. It's just a lot of in agreements. Nobody really said anything poignant that I want to point out. But I hear you. I see you, everyone, and I appreciate you. So we'll continue it next month. We're going to add an added topic, but we can still talk. I think we're going to always come back to discussions we previously had. I think that's just going to be the nature of the series. But I'm going to let everybody go. Thank everybody for joining in the comments. We appreciate you so much. Andrea and Lorindia, we're going to get some talking in at some point, but I really want us to soak up all of this. And then we're going to talk probably next month about our perspective as single women. We're going to go more into that with the couples on as well when we continue it. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Next week, always remember flawedforpurpose.com. Make sure you go and subscribe to the website, do all that good stuff so you know when we're going on, when we're going off, what we're talking about, and all that good stuff. God bless everybody. I hope you all enjoyed. Until next month.